Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mirror, the Unapologetic Podcast. My name is Diane Sassano. I'm your host. This evening, I have a very special young lady with us. Her name is Lexa. She's 15 years old, and she's going to be speaking to us today about teenagers and the trials and tribulations that they're going through this time in their life coming out of COVID and still basically in COVID, the lockdown. And there's some questions that I'll ask and she'll answer, and, I'll introduce her to you and you can meet her. So this is Lexa Ross, and we welcome you to Mirror.
Thank you.
Just tell us a little bit about you, your background.
Like you said, my name is Lexa Ross. I am 15. I do a lot of things outside of school. Like I play a lot of video games. I do a lot of art related things, spend time with family, things like that.
Okay, so and so I'm going to be asking her questions that I polled from 50 teenagers, and Alexa is going to be put on the hot seat to answer the questions for them. So the first one that we asked, that was a consensus, was, what are the issues that are challenging to the youth today? The first one that they said was bullying. Can you address the issues on that?
I can definitely connect with that one. I have been bullied for quite the bunch of years. I feel like it's something that is bound to happen to you, or you'll end up being the bullier, and that just doesn't feel good. I would say that it definitely leads to a lot of depression and things like that, which is difficult to work your way out of.
And how did you come out of that, Lexa, from the situation?
I figured out that most of their opinions was based off of their own pain, and some of them really didn't mean it, and the ones that did mean it, their opinion, I got used to their opinion not really mattering to me, like pushing it to the side and being like, okay, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. I just don't need to pay attention to yours.
That's beautiful. Okay, and another one that came up as accountability, and examples that they gave me were home, chores, school, and society. So you can take them one at a time. Okay. At home, accountability for being at home, in your chores.
So I would say that I'm quite lazy sometimes, if I'm being honest. I like to sit around, and I'm not the biggest fan of person of chores, even though they're like a quick 1-2, and I know they're easy and they won't do me any harm really. I still don't like to do them, but I will do them.
Do you think that when your parents ask you to do a chore, do you think that it's teaching you a life lesson in being responsible, and them holding you to accountability for something that's going to help you like later in life? I know that when I was speaking to the other teenagers, they were like, oh, not everybody likes to do it, like you said, but they do it. But do you feel that at times, or have you come to that realization that it's like a foundation for you for when you grow?
No, I would say that it definitely helps you realize that you need to be responsible and accountable. And even though it definitely pushes you to do things that you don't want to do, which is something that you're constantly going to have to do.
Right. There's always an authority figure, somebody you're going to have to listen to. Okay. What about school? Because I know this was and still is like a really tough year with the remote learning. And now they're starting to integrate everybody back into the schools. So what is your feeling on that? And what in this year that passed and being in lockdown, um, what were your feelings and what did you feel like was happening to you during that time?
I'll be honest, I got luckier because I do stay inside majority of the time. COVID didn't exactly affect me in the way it did others. I've been blessed with a nice home, so I don't need to use school as an escape like some other kids, but I do know those kids are out there. They need that to be kind of like a standpoint, a help, and things like that. So I think that for some people, it's been better. And for some people, it's made it worse. I would say that because my school, and like the districts around my school, they are giving the option of actually going back in person and like doing half or just staying online. I think that'll definitely work better for some people. I myself have been doing pretty good with the online school, so I plan to stay online. Um, and some people I know do better visual inside of the classroom, so I think this will work out better than it used to.
Okay. So, okay, and what followed that was the COVID-19 fears or lack of that you dealt with, or that that your friends and your community, your tribe, what was the narrative or the dialogue on that with children your age?
Um, I know I don't think kids honestly, or the people that I've met and like had their experience, I don't think they've been too panicky about it or like had any problems with it. They know to be diligent and they know to like social distance, things like that, make sure that they don't get sick so their family doesn't get sick. But none of them have really been like panicked or anything like that.
Have you heard of like any kids that went to your school that were having issues besides your immediate friends, like outside of that, like from the news or from your school district that you attended? Um, like, were there any things that like kids that weren't doing well that you heard of besides your immediate friends? Like maybe that, you heard from your friends, like, so and so is not, dealing well with it. And
Um, I know that I've heard the like occasional people don't like it. They're not like grasping the concept of anything online, or like COVID, but that's really all. I haven't heard anything like more drastic.
well, that's good. Okay, so that a big one that they were talking about was socialization, that they were missing the connection with their friends, and having to have effective communication in their family during this time, with their parents, their siblings, or the immediate family, I guess, that they were quarantined with. So, let's do your family, then you can tell me about your friends. So, how was the socializing? Did you miss it, not be able to connect with your friends? And how was the communication, within your family? Did you feel it was effective? Um, did your parent, well, we'll stop there. I don't want to give you too much, and then I'll just ask more.
Yeah. um, well, my relationship with my friends pretty much stayed the same because all we did was hang out, well, at school. And when I moved up, because this is my first year in high school, I didn't expect to have any of the classes with them. I have like one class with one of the people in the friend group, but besides that, I don't see them very often. So we do the occasional like talk in a group chat on like Discord or something, but it hasn't really changed how we view each other or our relationship with each other. It's been more of a little bit more distance from each other, but we still have that same like friend type of viewpoint.
Okay, so the connection that you had, like if you would hang out at the pool versus now not being able to hang out at the pool, do you feel like in the socialization, like the connection, because I know connection is huge with teenagers, because you talk and stuff like that. Um, so do you feel that with that kind of like being like shut down, that you've missed maybe that growing aspect part of, that whole year of being with people and growing, because you grow with your friends basically. So do you miss that part of it, the connection, like that kind of?
Um, I can see why people would, and me myself. Um, I'm not really close with any of my friends. And we didn't really hang out after school, really, except for I mean, we did sit at, like, we had a hill and we'd sit there and wait for each of us to get picked up. And even throughout COVID, I know they met up like 3 different times. And then I went to one of those. It was nice to see them again, and it was nice to hang out with them, but it felt kind of the same.
Okay, so there was, you didn't feel a disconnect during this whole
Yeah.
year. Okay, so then and how about communication within your family? A lot of teenagers were telling me that some of it brought them closer together in the means of finally, like, there wasn't like all that external distraction. And then I had some on the other side that said that they were feeling like the tension that the parents were feeling, and that affected them. If you can speak on that.
So this is kind of, in a way, a 50-50, because I do have two households. I'll start with my mom's because I'm there most of the time. Um, I have always been fairly close with my mom, and I've always had an extremely well connection with her. And so it kind of stayed the same. In a way, I think it did make me open up to her more, because we'll go on like walks and we'll talk to each other. I'll talk to her about how I'm feeling or how things have been going, or like if I'm stressed and things like that. So it's definitely brought me closer to her, and it's definitely brought me closer to my stepdad. um we I had already clicked with him when I had first met him because we had a lot in common. It's kind of like what you expect to have with a friend, like multiple things in common. You look for that person. We had a lot in common. We do pretty much the same daily schedule. um so it definitely got me closer to bonding with him too, and being like okay with him around the house and things like that. But over at my dad's house, I wouldn't say anything really. I mean, it definitely changed. Things changed. Um, I have a connection with my dad that isn't bad, or well, I wouldn't say it isn't bad, but it's not the worst thing. It's like just below good. Um, and I mean, I I started because when I had my original schedule, which was a week on, week off for houses, I had always stayed up in my room because I never really saw the need to go out of my room. I felt uncomfortable around there. So it was difficult. And recently with like the weekends, me, because I changed my schedule to see if this would work better, I have been opening up to my dad more. I've been a little bit more resilient towards him, but I would say it's gotten, in a way, in like some ways worse and in some ways better. And then with my stepmom, we don't really have a relationship. We don't really talk that often. It's kind of like a neutral standing. So I'd say that's how it went for me.
And so do you think that in lockdown, like, it was a time that you reflected yourself, and that in your self-reflection that it made you have a different perspective maybe on, because what you're telling me is that you were feeling one way about your biological dad, and then you took the perspective of stepping up and changing your schedule so you could so you could open up a different dialogue, open up a different relationship with him. So do you feel that in retrospect to that, that this time helped you as a person to reflect not on only on your needs, right? You know, the way you thought, but did this help you look at your parents and, you know, in a different light, basically?
Mm, um, a little bit. Yeah, I'd say a little bit.
So, okay. So that's good. But you did, but you know, you sound to me like you took a step back and you viewed the family in a different way. That's what I get from you. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to, at your age, you know, to be that mature and to realize that if maybe you change something, that something else would change in the dynamic in the relationship. Um, okay, so the next one was, what are the issues facing the youth today? The first one was drugs and alcohol. And you don't have to speak specifically, but you can speak generally about that, like what you know or what you've heard or, you know, anything like that.
So yeah, those things have definitely affected the newer generations and generations to even come, because I mean that can influence their kids or the ones after them. I personally don't like it. Um, I think that I I can see that people see it as like, or some people see it as an escape route or like something to cope with their like mental state or things like that. But I feel as though there are better ways to go about it. And there are better solutions for the problems. And honestly, if you do like, if you like get obsessed with alcohol, or if you're like doing multiple drugs or things like that, it kind of is just going to open up more and more problems. I would rather deal with the one problem that I had now, or like, or this is just a scenario. I don't really have any problems with anything, but I would rather deal with the one problem instead of the multiple problems that are going to come after because of me wanting to escape one problem.
Okay, let me ask you to address this directly to the hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of teenagers that are going to see this. What would you say to them so they didn't try to find something to numb out and not or not open up? What would you say to them?
There are people that would like to help you, and there are people out there that would love to see you grow to prosper, whether that's a friend, a family member, a teacher, some sort of accountant. I mean, you could even start going to like therapy or like things like that to help express yourself and to help show that you want to get better, that you want to change. You don't want things to stay as they are, because that's going to be even worse for you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Okay, then they also addressed from doing the things that they've done, you know, as like what kids would do, like gamers or whatever like that. They said within this year that passed, the COVID year, I call it, that they had to grow up really fast. Like they grew up faster, like more responsibility, more accountability. Um, some of them felt that that like they're like I guess a part of their life or chunk of their life was taken out. How would you address that to them? They addressed it as growing up too fast.
Mm, I personally don't feel it that way. Um, I'm like getting at the age where I need to start being more responsible and things like that. So maybe that's why I don't really see it in that light or anything. But if I was younger, I could definitely see why the kids are like just beginning preteens to see it that way. It's definitely made you or like made myself more responsible in a way. Having to like, because I used to like school was the way that I'd get like my exercise and stuff. And so having that every day, walking to school, things like that, I had gotten like a nice amount of exercise. But now I'm like seeing that I kind of slack on that because it's not my favorite thing to do. I don't think anyone really likes doing it unless you're like a gymnast or something like that. But I realized that I have to push myself to go out of the house if I want to get some sort of like physical activity, things like that. So I can see why people are relating it to growing up a little bit more quickly, because you do have to take that responsibility to go do the things, and you have to do it yourself instead of someone telling you, hey, go and do it. It's for this and that.
Right. So more like instead of them being structured in school and having to do it,
Yeah.
they, okay, perfect. Okay, so the next one is when I did the poll, I had more females answer this question than males. And it was to do with health and body image. The gentlemen, the boys, gentlemen, they answered more towards the health aspect, and the girls went more towards the body image. And I put the question to them as, has, you know, in their life, because they're coming, the poll was between 14 and 17-year-olds. And the boys discussed the aspect of um, starting when they were younger, that they had a big influence, and the girls too, a big influence, they said, was TV, magazines, um, social media, and something else, I can't remember, but another outlet, how they viewed themselves, like that they had to, like, and the boys aspect was that they had to achieve, like this body, because if they didn't achieve this body, like be, like really masculine or act masculine, and it was more like they were pushing themselves and doing things to their body, their young bodies that weren't ready. Like a lot of them were doing, they told me, like weightlifting, um, and things that, because when we talked about it, I said to them, within, your body's still growing, and that aspect of it. And they realized that, like, I think one of them was doing it for like 2 years, and he said that he had a lot of injuries because he wasn't taught properly how to do it. But his thing was that, well, on TV, they display this, in the news, on social media, that you have to look a certain way, and that's how the guys viewed it, that they had to look, like this, like they felt like they want to be so comfortable in their bodies, but then again, they didn't want to be vulnerable and say that they didn't feel comfortable in their bodies because all their friends were doing these, things. But some of them would say that we really didn't want to do it, because then we ended up hurting, some of them got hurt. And on the girls' side, they said very much that they felt more comfortable in their bodies. Some of them talked about dress, um, that their portrayal of what the norm was for them was how they would view, like, people like on social media, which was the biggest, like, I guess, reflection back on themselves was viewing social media. And it was more about they very much believed in their values and their morals, but they said that they did notice that they would dress, maybe not the way that they should dress at that age. And we talked about, the values and morals, which they had very much so, but they said that the reflection of to be popular or to be able to socialize with other boys and girls, that they had to maintain this outward external appearance, even if they felt uncomfortable. So it was more towards the girls with the clothing, and not about really like exercising or stuff like that. So I don't know, you talk on that.
Well, first, if you have to pretend to be someone else or look like you're someone else than you actually are, and people are judging you and you call them your friends, they're not your friends. I'll say that. It's better to rip off the Band-Aid early than it is to leave it there and it hurt more later. Honestly, I'm a person that is okay with wearing formal, or like not big formal, but like a dress that is a little bit fancy on a regular day. I can be okay with that. I'll be like, yeah, whatever. It's clothing. I'm at least I'm wearing clothing. For the longest of time, and even nowadays, I still sometimes will not match my clothing like perfectly or anything like that. So I myself have realized that you have to stick to yourself. If you're not going to stick to yourself, then you're going to be putting on a mask and you're going to be pretending that you're someone that you're not, and you're going to be shown as that someone when you're not. And then when you break, because we all eventually break, when you break, those people are probably going to make fun of you. And you could have already had them make fun of you earlier on and be healing than you lying to yourself for so long and then breaking and then being hurt and then being shown as like vulnerable. And it leads, like I said, it's like you keep the one problem and it leads to more.
So do you feel that, at your age and going forward, do you feel that there was a change that has come over? Or do you think, with the mindset of young people, that they're understanding to respect themselves more? Or do you think that they do the things that they do because they want attention? Because some of them even talked about that I had 2 or 3 young ladies that talked about that they dressed a certain way because that they wanted attention.
Um,
And yeah.
yeah, some people definitely go for the approach of wanting more attention. So I can see that.
What advice would you give them, telling them that they should love themselves? Because you seem very comfortable in your skin. So what advice would you give to these young ladies?
Um, well, if you truly like how you dress, and don't even lie to yourself and be like, do I like it? If you have to question yourself on it, then no, you don't like it. If you're not comfortable with it and you just want people to see you, use a talent or a skill instead. Don't put your body and your mental state in that situation.
True, very true. That's really admirable words. Okay, the next one I gave them was, what is the most difficult challenges growing up today? And the first one that we went to was the poll was behavior, social and antisocial behavior. um, meaning that we were speaking about their behaviors that um, they're in the reference to social and antisocial is that they said that they feel that more towards like antisocial in regards to because of technology, and that they have a difficult time socializing or making eye contact with people if they didn't have like a phone or something there. So what is your feelings on that?
So I myself can either go under the category of antisocial and or an ambivert, which is both. It's like an equal amount. I am antisocial at first, extremely antisocial. My social anxiety has spiked definitely since we've gone online. I've never been like a friend type of person. I've been very diligent with that. So that has also not done me the best with social interaction. Being online doesn't mean you can just like kick away the social anxiety or how antisocial you are. It definitely makes things harder, and it definitely makes yourself have to push yourself harder. And I'm even like still going through that. I myself, whenever I get on, it took me like, actually for school, I didn't really have the same social anxiety. But whenever I go to like talk to any of my online friends, because that's what I lean to more, I'll still have like that social anxiety of being like, oh God, what's gonna happen? It doesn't, I don't think it'll ever go away. It's kind of like an instinct. It'll always be there, whether it's dialed down to barely anything and you don't feel it really, or it's like what you would say is the worst thing you experience. Being in person, it kind of forces you to socialize more because you can't really hide behind a screen and you can't really hide yourself from everything. You have to experience the world, experience the people you're around, whether they approach you or you approach them. So it definitely pushes you more out of like that comfort zone.
So do you think that when the lockdown is over and they lift all the restrictions, do you think we're going to see a lot of do you think that people are going to start connecting in a different way because of understanding everything that they've gone through in, in this year and better, the changes that they had to make to, to readapting and to understanding that, like they were in isolation. So do you think that they're going to come out, thinking or feeling or acting differently?
I think that this will definitely change how people are able to get along. And I think that some people will struggle with it and some people will immediately click.
Okay.
I think that if I'm thinking of it like right now as a view of like the people I'm surrounded by. I myself have always had a problem when it comes to social interaction. Um, so it'll probably be harder for me. I just have to push myself to that. The people that I'm around for most of my schoolwork and for classes, I feel like a lot of them are eager to get out. So I think they'll be able to use it in a way, but it won't be like major like click instantly type of thing.
So they're kind of be like still a little bit reserved. So they're so what I'm feeling from you is that, so you think that this will definitely change the dynamic of maybe them missing the socialization in person. So this would definitely make them maybe not be shy, but maybe they've learned the importance of not having that social interaction, like face to face.
Yeah.
Okay, Cool. Okay, so now another one that we talked about was, we talked about racial discrimination, and they also talked about the protest. And I'll just let you speak, whatever you want to say on that.
I feel
Because
like I'm not exactly the best person to give my entire view because I haven't been entirely like close to that. I know that racism can get to people really easily in a way of either expressing that as like anger or anything like that. And I feel as though so like it'll be maybe even more difficult than before because of other people's actions. I didn't really stay in touch with very much. I don't stay in touch with the news, so I'm not entirely sure about the protest because I'm like I said I'm not much of a stay into that type of person, so I don't have exactly the most like I don't have a strong opinion on this one very much, but I feel like it's always been difficult, and I don't think that racism will ever go away because of the history we've had with it and things like that. But I think it could definitely be like we could definitely be much better about it than we are.
thank you for taking that. That's a big question. I get that. Okay, and they also talked about, well, I know that you don't watch the news. I mean, I don't watch it either, but they talked about corruption in the world in general. So I don't, I just put it out there and I just let them discuss it, and they came back with, in general, just corruption in the world. So they really weren't like picking sides or choosing topics or politics. They just were talking about corruption in the world in general.
Okay, yeah, I can do that one. So corruption's there. It is always going to be there. There's always going to be someone that is corrupted with either power or money or things like that. They will hold it above you, and it'll be there for a long time until you're able to withstand it or fight back against it. There are many ways to be corrupt. Like I said, some of those is just power. Some people will be power hungry or things like that, just to have something against you or above you that they think you can't deal with, that they think that you can't really like retaliate against.
And how do you think that's affected your generation with everything that has gone on?
Um,
And how will it affect the future generations?
well, if the type of corruption that currently happens keeps on going, um, it definitely, I'm like trying to find like the words for this, but I feel as though it'll in a way make us more it could go two of ways. There will be the people that will fall to it. There will be the people that retaliate against it, and those are like the main two ways that it could go. And there would be also the people that are higher up with the corruption. I think that due to the level of corruption that we currently have, it'll make our next generations worse, because I because there will be few people that actually know how to stand up to it and actually how to deal with it. So I think it'll make people more like obedient in a way, but not in like a good way.
Okay. So, okay, then the next one was gender equality. And they spoke about this again in a general sense. Um, but they spoke of it because I had two that were gay that I spoke to, and they felt it was difficult, obviously, coming out to their parents, but it was, accepted. And they felt very comfortable with themselves, but they felt that the broad picture on gender equality is far from where it should be, today. And how do you feel about that?
I would definitely agree with it. Um, uh, it's difficult. Um, because some people won't accept that this is the newer generation. This is how it'll be currently. And honestly, when it comes to like the equality in both male, female, or people that even don't identify, um, I thought that at first, um, females had it hard because of how it was in the past. I mean, even males have it hard for some things. And I mean, yeah, sexism is definitely still there. People are against females doing certain things. Some people don't even support them going into the military because they think they're weak, even though they can do even if they can't do it to the same ability that the other gender can, it doesn't mean that they can't do it.
Right.
They still have the ability to do it. I mean, even they can like do better than the opposite gender or other things like that. But as I was saying, I thought that females had it the worst, like for the longest of time. Um, but now that there are people that don't identify with a gender, I feel like they've been getting it pretty difficult. Some people don't want to accept it because of the scientific look at it, which is um, just, I honestly think that people can identify with what they want to be.
Okay.
And I know that the support for LGBTQ plus things like that is also fairly low because they're not people of older generations, or I mean, even some of the people in newer generations don't want to accept it because they've been taught that way. They've been told that's not acceptable, things like that.
So, and
But
how does that make you feel, knowing that this is still, I mean, generations of knowing that it's that you're still a human being, and just because you were born into, just say, you will your soul tells you that you're a female, but you were born into, a male body, or vice versa. And if they want to identify with that, why is it so difficult for people? You know, I mean, some people that I've spoken to, told me that they liken it to a disease, which is so horrible to even to say something like
yeah,
that, or that God is going to punish them. And and there's a lot. I mean, it's such a difficult subject to discuss because it's so personal, I guess, to everybody. But coming up in this world where everybody is supposed to be accepted, and we're all one because we're all energy. Why do you think that people are more, like, your generation is so much more accepting of just a human being? You're just a person, you're not that I identify them with, with their gender, or why is this stigma there? That's what, that was like a big thing, like this stigma. But one of them, when they told me, my heart almost broke when they told me that, yeah, my grandparents liken it to a disease. I was like, what?
It's just I honestly think that's wrong. I I think that the older generations are used to how the science works. They're used to sticking with the scientific way, which is whatever gender you're born with, you have to keep that. And I think that the younger generation have accepted that you can be you, whatever type of thing.
I guess, yeah, it just probably just a different mindset, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
that too.
Okay, so then this was just a general question. Natural disasters in the world that they were talking about, like natural disasters that hit the world, like starting in 2019, and anything that you care to discuss on, with your perspective on why do you think that we were having these disasters in 2019, the floods, the fires. I mean, they were absolutely, abnormal. And, they talked about that and what they felt, from their own perspective.
Well, I'm not entirely sure about this one, honestly. I just kind of go with the flow. If it happens, type of it happens.
Do you think that these natural disasters were a way of trying to tell the world in general that we're not taking care of the planet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it could. I've always been a person that like will not foolishly believe everything, but I think pretty much anything is possible at this point with how things have been. So I think that it definitely could be a way of the world telling us that we need to square up and start taking care of things better than we are currently.
Sure. I agree with you. Okay, so then we would talk about, what do you think if schools implemented life lessons in school? And the list that they gave me were like balancing a checkbook, meditation, becoming stress-free in the environment. Like they said, like they have study time. So instead of having study time, why can't they implement something to teach them how to de-stress themselves? Then how to take care of the world, which was another one, and then how to be of service to people. So you can, I guess.
I think that this would probably be better because the courses that we take in class, if we're going off of the basic, which is mathematics, social studies, writing and reading, and science and things like that, I think that some of those, with the exception of writing and reading and maybe a little bit of social studies, is and maybe a little bit of math, is not entirely needed. You don't need to go into depth about a science class if you're not going to be doing anything really scientific for your job or like a hobby if you don't like doing it. So I think that the classes would definitely, those type of classes like would definitely benefit us more than the classes we currently have, because school doesn't exactly teach you about what to expect in life, like taxes and things like that. They don't talk about that. They just teach you the basics of each thing.
So so your feeling is, like they felt too, is that they should add these things in part of the curriculum for things that they actually will need in life as a foundation to help them.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so then we talked about technology in the world today. And some of them said that they feel that it's caused a disconnect from one generation to another. We'll go with that one first.
Um, yeah, I can see that. It's definitely caused generations. I mean, some generations aren't used to having that. Some are like, okay, oh well, type of thing. Some are like, oh, you should do this. Don't always be like cooped up, which you shouldn't be always cooped up. Even though I do that, it's not a good thing. But I don't think that like older generations are like used to it entirely, if that's the right wording. Um, but yeah, I think that it's definitely caused a little bit of separation, and a little bit at the same time it's kind of not, because like there are some people in the older generations or like that are perfectly fine with the internet. They'll be like, this does that and that does that. Simple. But yeah.
Okay, and then the last one they discussed the feeling about how people they feel no longer communicate. I think we've covered this before, but again, they've talked about it at the end when I was done with them. They felt that they didn't have the means of having an actual conversation with somebody, like sitting down without technology there, like interference, that they felt uncomfortable being actually having to sit down and just to have a conversation with no technology.
Oh, yeah. For that, um, I know because of my anxiety, I always have to be doing something if I'm speaking with someone. Most of the time it's like either like scratching at myself or like fiddling with my fingers, tapping my foot, something like that. Um, it definitely feels more comfortable if you do that. And it can be difficult to not have something that distracts you. And I feel as though that maybe that is because we're not like used to being able to speak to people up front. We normally go to the route of like talking to them over phone or texting them or some sort of way like that.
So, speaking on that, so do you think that technology has caused, I mean, people and everybody in general, but your generation coming up has kind of put like yeah, like how are you going to be able to communicate, as you grow up with the boss, with friends, in a relationship, with your parents. So do you think technology has like unlearned you from being a communicative person other than having to deal with technology? Because there's a lot of mistranslations obviously through text. It's things get taken out of context.
Yeah.
So what do you feel that they could do to help them, because they see that as an issue? um, like the older ones that were 17, they told me that they found it really difficult that when they had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that they couldn't, it was difficult for them to connect on that level without having like their phone, or they said they would be sitting like maybe at the same table and they were texting each other instead of having that
Yeah.
face-to-face conversation. So how would you address that to them? I mean, what would you say?
Um, it's even though it's more difficult to talk to people up front, it's very important because, like you said, things can be taken out of context or they can be taken the wrong way or they could be misunderstood entirely. Intentions, the way that you're speaking to them, things like that. Um, so it's definitely important to have that, like the in-person social interaction, um, of just talking to each other. And it's very important that You take the measures of being able to actually do it. I mean, eventually you'll end up learning it from job interviews or something like that, but it'd just be easier if you start it now and earlier than later.
Okay, so the last thing to wrap this up, to all parents out there, what would you say? What would you say to help them, to help their children, to what do you think that parents need to do? Because that you are growing up a different way, what and generally just like what would you want your parents to be open and speak to you about, and not think that you couldn't handle it, or that you were too young to hear that? What would you think, what would you say to the parents out there, to kids from say 14 to 17 or so, that other than don't discount our intelligence, or I'll let you speak on that.
Um, so I would say that it's definitely important for a parent to take the parental role instead of being someone to the side, like a friend or a companion. Um, but there are different ways to do it. And I know it definitely also includes the different type of people or the personality of the person, how stubborn they are, things like that. But you have to be able to connect with your child in order to try and understand where they're coming from. And they also need to connect with you to understand where you're coming from on your side. You could be someone that's like more assertive with your language and extremely up top, like you have to do this, you have to do that, like someone that's very direct and strict. And your kid could also be extra, like the same way. They could also be extremely direct and like more strict or more rebellious, or like they fight back. So if it doesn't work, you kind of have to try and take multiple approaches to it. You have to try more than one way to figure out what works best. You have to be able to adjust, and they also need to be able to adjust to the ways. You have to be able to click in certain ways and know how to connect with the person while also staying yourself and being honest with each other.
Okay, that's perfect. Is there anything else you'd like to say or to add?
No, I think that's about it.
Well, I want to thank you for being so brave and so confident and such a beautiful human being and a really beautiful girl, coming on here and doing this. I
Thank
know
you for
you were
inviting me.
scared. Oh, it was my pleasure. And I want to thank everybody. This will be on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on the YouTube. And follow us for more. Maybe we'll bring Lexa on here again. And I thank you, Lexa, for joining me. It was a very beautiful interview, and you're very intelligent.
Yes, thank you for the experience.
You're welcome. Okay, well, thank you, and thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.